Welcome back to the Philippicrits, where we are demythologized on a daily basis by the Word of God and the Word of Truth. Today, Stefan is back with us, and we are going to carry on with the story of Lamech, where he explains a bit more about his life and potentially also describes his own death. Does he? Stay tuned and find out. Okay, I think with that we can get right into it. I'm gonna just read the verse 23, which is where we're starting. Alright, thanks for joining, Stefan.
That's a pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Yep. It's a pleasure as well, always. I feel like there's a verse like that somewhere, but anyway. Yeah, so verse 23. Vayomer lemech לנשב עדה וצילה שמען קולי נשה למך האזנה אמרתי כי איש הרגתי לפצעי וילד לחבורתי.
Verse 23. Then Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice. Wives of Lamech, listen to my speech. For I have killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. That's it.
Yeah, that's a pretty weird one. The thing is, I'm not sure, like, is he dying? And then he says this? Are these like his dying words? It doesn't expand on it any further than
He's
this.
wounded, it seems.
Yeah, so in self-defense he's killed a man, that's what he's saying.
Are these two different people that he's killed? Two different cases of self-defense?
Oh, I see. No, I don't think so. I think one can see that. I mean, you get parallelisms in Hebrew, as you know, which is like it's just a repetition, and it's a form of poetry. And it seems like here he's doing, like in Norse magic, you get, I think it's a womanly magic, which is called Seidr or something, and that's like, that to me seems like, if I understand it correctly, something like this.
Okay.
Or Odin definitely does it as well, though. So I don't know if it's womanly or if it's just witchcraft or something, magic. But like that you use words and you weave them together in a way that casts a spell. And that isn't happening here, obviously, because, well, maybe he's a magician of some sorts, but I don't think so. I think he's just, as one often finds in the Old Testament, speaking in verse. And he's saying, because he speaks... Well, he says first the thing that he says is introduced by saying, and Lamech said to his wives Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, wives of Lamech, but then he repeats that and says, listen to my speech. He doesn't really need to say, listen to my speech after having said, hear my voice. And he addresses them in person. So I think it's just an official, it's a way of, like you brought up oral tradition just before we started recording. And maybe this is just a way in oral tradition to make something official.
Yeah.
Like,
it's an emphasis or an expansion on what he's saying to give the verse a bit, or the whole entire section, to give it a bit more balance or flow.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'd start like being afraid.
I mean, look at when we speak, we're repeating stuff all the time, mostly because we can't string together a sentence clearly and fluently.
Yeah.
Because, well, we're out of practice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Who was it? Oh, it was Fisk as well, but there was someone else. Oh, I was reading Tolkien, and I can't remember where he brings it up. But he somewhere says he is not like those something of old, like those men of old, or something that could contain these entire stories in their mind. And I think he's referring to like those people that transferred orally the epics of Homer or whatever, things like this. And I mean, imagine if you can contain that entire epic in your memory. That has to have an influence on how you're able to speak, even if you're not reciting a poem. I think it just informs how you express yourself. And so if you carry all of these things in your memory, then you're able to just like weave together awesome poetry slams. So maybe that's a bit what he's doing. He's just saying.
I think, that's musicians, especially rappers. This freestyle rap style is that you have things ready in your head that you've used before, and the more you use it, the better you get at improvising something on the fly.
Yeah. And you're probably also always actively trying to discover new ways of expressing yourself, I'd imagine. So then you can always like, that's pretty cool. And so he's rapping. First rapper, Lamech.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. Anyway, so he killed a young man in self-defense. Or a man, he says. An ish, and then the word Yeled comes up. That's an interesting word, Yeled. A young man, specifically. But he did it because the boy wounded him. I wonder if it was just out of rage. Like if he killed his own son? No, but then I would have probably specified that. But it is it could Yeled comes from the word Yalad, which is to give birth to. So I wonder how young a Yeled is, if it's like an infant. It says young man or boy. So maybe he's like 14 years old or something.
Well, he would be strong enough to hurt someone, or maybe Lamech is now old enough to be hurt by a 14-year-old, but...
Yeah, maybe he took a rock and threw it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Could be, I suppose.
A bit of a rougher time, maybe. So he killed a Yeled, because it's definitely it's a pre-adolescent, I think.
Okay. Sure.
Which is interesting. So he killed a boy. He killed a child. No, but it says ish. I don't understand that. He's killed a man.
A young man.
So maybe you're not far off there with saying it's two. It just says here ish. But ish is that's another interesting thing I discovered, is that ish, I think, is related to the word mortal, which to me is interesting because it's used in the Garden of Eden already. But apparently it maybe comes from the word anash, which means to be weak or sick, which contains kind of like mortality in it. So I've been struck by a mortal or something. But I don't know if one can go that far. It definitely means ish in like a more colloquial sense.
I would say it seems to be the theme of vengeance, continuing from the story of Cain and Abel.
Okay.
And that I think is what's happening here. Or don't you think so?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, he does explicitly say that it's a reaction.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because this guy wounded me and because he hurt me. Yeah. Yeah, so that's interesting. Then we can go to the next verse, I think, because that sort of makes sense. The theme of vengeance, I think, is implicit with Cain.
Yeah. This ties it. The next verse ties it in further.
Yeah. Well,
so let's read that. Yeah.
Verse 24 then is Ki shiv athaim yukam Cain v'lemech shivim v'shiva. That's it.
If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold. Well, we know what that ties in with.
Forgiveness.
Yep. Yep. We don't often go back when we read that 77-fold verse in the New Testament. I don't think it's that when you analyze this, I don't remember going back. It always comes. Well, that's the verse I remember when thinking of the 77-fold. Anything. Not this verse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is obvious that Jesus uses the Old Testament as a way of communicating things and showing his authority to the people he was speaking to when he was around. And yeah, it's an amazing flip around to forgive 77 times, 77-fold. And this is being avenged 77-fold.
Yeah, that's definitely very cool. I didn't register that until you said what you said, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
that's pretty.
I mean, it seems obvious though.
Yeah,
now that like an obvious connection. I don't know.
I mean, it is, yeah, because that number only comes up in certain places, and that's also how you build up concepts. As you look at how the word is used in its different, what do you call it? Uses in the different places where it emerges, and its different emergences. You see how it's used or something, and then you can build up, okay, what exactly it means in greater precision. So that is really good. I think that's pretty interesting, because this is the exact opposite of forgiveness. It's vengeance, and he says, "I will be avenged." Another interesting thing to me is that it is still in the previous verse, but to connect it with forgiveness via atonement, and this word that is used for the man that struck me or something. Sorry, what was it? Verse 23. It was Chavurathi, man. So the young boy who struck me or something. It's the same word that's used for the stripes in Isaiah 53, where it says, by his stripes we have been healed, I think, or something like that.
Okay. Not so because I saw it was bruise.
Yeah, that's another one.
Or is that another word?
Yeah, that also comes up in Isaiah, but it's not used in the Isaiah 53, which would be really cool if both of those words came up there, but it doesn't.
Or if it was that bruise that the serpent does to Eve's
seed, yeah,
descendants.
Yeah, that would also have been cool. But this is the first time it comes up.
This is the first, okay.
Yeah. So I mean that's also important though. Pizza, which always, for me, that sounds a bit like we've got this slang word to pit someone. You know, if you hit them.
I'm sorry?
You get pitzed. Is that like a rude word?
What?
The guys in my class used to say it at school, not economically.
It might be.
Yeah.
Might be a rude word.
Anyway,
I'm not familiar with that.
I'll have to look it up. But petsa is to wound someone. I always think to smack someone. Yeah. Otherwise, it doesn't seem. It comes up in Exodus again, but it's not super frequent. Petsa. Cool. But then, so forgiveness. Was there anything else you saw here? Avenge.
Didn't really. That's what makes me wonder. Well, it's on its own. It doesn't. It serves to confuse me quite a bit. This talk, because we can't justify that sort of talk of vengeance on someone who's wronged you. Simply because of his heritage, it seems, because he's related to Cain. That's why he can be avenged, or by that same reasoning, and that same justice.
Yeah.
Why is he talking to his wives? I don't know. But that link to Jesus' quote on sin being forgiven 77-fold. That sort of justifies, I think, why it's still here. And that maybe this was a part of structuring the culture of the Jewish faith, or the Israelite people before Jesus came. And then, Jesus used that to illustrate the new covenant.
Yeah, that is pretty, I think that is good. The 7 is a very important number also for the feast of the year of Jubilee, and the Sabbath, obviously, 7th day, year of Jubilee, 7th year. And then there's 7 times 7 years, then there's another thing. So there's like 7s layered into 7s in the Jewish calendar as well. Or, not calendar, but it's more than a calendar, I think, if it goes on for multiple numbers of years. But like the way they see time and so on, 7 is definitely very significant.
Yeah.
And it's also got a sense of completeness to it.
Yeah, that's
so
what we don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
All that it encompasses. It's a symbolic number, yeah.
Yeah.
Has to do with being complete or completely avenged. I don't know,
Yeah.
Not for logistic purposes. It's not exactly 7 times kind of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely drawn from the fact that creation is complete when it's 7 days old. There was another thing that you brought up just now, which I thought was really interesting with regard to Lamech. Oh, he's speaking to his wives, and they're 2 wives. So he's got 2 witnesses, which is also important in the law of Moses later on, that you need at least 2 witnesses. So that was another interesting thing. And you brought up something else, and I can't remember what it was. But I did want to say, I haven't said it yet, that to me there's also kind of the memory of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If one sees the da'ath, the knowledge, as a kind of marriage with both good and evil at the same time. Here, Lamech is married to 2 women at the same time, I think. I wonder if there's a connection. I don't know if there is. It's not explicit, but it does seem to also catch up another motif, this kind of adultery motif. And yes, that's what it was, that it doesn't make sense that he seeks to be avenged just because of his heritage. Although I don't think that kind of language is entirely foreign to the Bible, but it makes me also think of people that I think I did say it in the intro to the previous video, they tout by grace alone, but then they don't have grace for others. So it's kind of that story of the servant that is forgiven by the king, all of his debts, and then he goes and he sort of demands his debt from the other guy who owes him a debt. So I was thinking of something along those lines, that your father was given the mark of Cain as by God's grace so that he isn't killed, but then you just sort of take that as his descendant for yourself, which isn't unbiblical if one looks at the way that like lineages work biblically, but it's definitely like sort of abusing it, I think, to a degree. Or one could maybe see it that way.
Or I mean, if you take it as the word of your forefathers, that it comes back to this oral tradition, and you respected the forefathers more than I think we do nowadays. And wow, this connects with a whole lot of different ideas, but our fathers aren't where the sort of authority comes from, because we can read the Bible ourselves. Whereas if they were the source of the word of God, if they were passing on the oral tradition, they have this authority is just I don't know, it's exemplified, I think. And so maybe that does give him the authority to say something like this, and it is as if God is saying, like you said, the blessings pass on to the descendants.
So in Genesis 34, verse 7, this is after Moses has to redo the commandments because he broke them all in one moment. That's a joke because he threw them down.
Oh yeah.
And they shattered. Anyway, so but he has to chisel them back into stone, and then God says, "And the Lord passed by before him and proclaimed the Lord God is merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children, and to the third and the fourth generation." Which is, yeah, pretty interesting and good. But there we also see kind of Cain's sin, or the heritage of Cain also still having a big bearing on his descendants, like Lamech. And then I read recently, it was about Pelagius. I was reading up on Pelagius a bit, and apparently the Pelagians like to use a thing in Deuteronomy where it says that a son will not be punished for the sins of his father, but for his own sins or something, which I thought was interesting because it seems almost like it's in contradiction, but it won't be, obviously, because I even still think that it was all written by Moses. so I don't think it will be. Yeah.
I think this is a strong cultural theme of that oral tradition, and we have to look at it that way and not.
Yeah. Not just this, what's called discredited or something.
That's obviously the next step. To say, oh no, that doesn't apply to us at all, is maybe going a bit too far.
Yeah.
We need to think about how that plays out today, with considering that the New Testament exists and that we have access to that as well.
Yeah, but the New Testament definitely is like, again, the exact opposite of, like you were saying, with the forgiveness thing. Yeah, so let's see. I mean, he's not a positive example, I don't think, Lamech.
So I think even in those times.
I think so, but I think he's a part of the trajectory that leads to the flood. Like, this shows that the sins of the fathers have such an effect that they kind of can lead to a snowballing effect where eventually the entire world is so corrupt that God repents of making man in the first place, which is quite a hectic point for the Creator, who is love itself, to get to.
I suppose that's fair enough, because so far we've had Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, and those weren't exactly the perfect examples of what we should be doing. So yeah, I guess that would make sense.
Yeah,
that all this is still cautionary.
Yeah, then can we go on to verse 25?
Sure.
Nice. We're almost done. I want to see if we can get to 26. But it's been...
sure, we can do that today. That's fine.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Thanks. Then, Vayeda Adam... Okay, so that's Lamech actually. Maybe we can just... Is there still something you want to say about Lamech? Because then we can say it now.
No, I'm happy to move on.
Okay, cool. Because now we return after Cain's reducing Abel to nothing. And after his lineage being described a little bit, we return to Adam and Eve, who've lost their son Abel. Maybe they shouldn't have called him Abel, but anyway. And yeah, now we see what they're up to, and it says, Vayeda Adam ot eth ishto vateled ben vatikra eth shemo Sheth ki shathli Elohim zera acher tachath hevel ki haragu Cain. That's verse 25.
And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth. For God has appointed another seed for me instead of Abel, whom Cain killed.
Nice. So here we get the word Seth for the first. Sheth, sorry, it is Sheth, yeah, for the first time. Or Sheth, I think, as well. Which is to appoint. I think it's related or similar to the word sim.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is to put. So I think sim and shith are to put and to appoint and so on. So that's what Sheth's name means, or Seth's name means, is to appoint. And then, so in the Hebrew, you can hear it where she says, or Sheth ki shathli, so it even sounds a bit poetic. Sheth ki shathli, which is Seth because he has been appointed. Seth because he has been appointed, or something like that. So that's interesting. So Adam and Eve have another child, and it says instead of Abel, which is also interesting. Or after Abel is what the Hebrew says. Is that what the NKJV says as well?
Instead.
That's interesting. I mean, literally it would be after, I think. Tachat. After Abel. Or is it under? Sorry. No, it's beneath, sorry. It's also mitachat is to be beneath, so. Yeah, underneath, below. And instead of. Okay, so instead. Okay, so there's that also, that connotation to tachat. That's good to know. So instead of Abel, beneath Abel. Ah, it's interesting. The word harag has come up a couple of times. Because Cain killed, he harag, and then Lamech killed, so he also harag, and now it's a repetition of the fact that Abel was killed by Cain, whom Cain killed. Okay, cool. Then we can. Yeah, sorry, was there anything you wanted to say to that?
No, we can read this next verse as well.
Yeah, I guess it's still part of the same thought.
Part of the same idea, yeah.
Yeah. So verse 26 is Ulsheth gamhu yelad ben vayikra et shemo enosh as huhal likro b'shem Adonai. Oh, this is a good one, yeah.
And as for Seth, to him was also born, also a son was born. To him also a son was born, and he named him Enosh. Then men began to call on the name of the Lord.
Yeah. So I think about this there is a bit of debate. With what exactly is meant with B'Shem Adonai, with on the name of the Lord, because his actual name as he reveals himself to Moses is put in the text here. And if one thinks of Moses as the one who's writing this, then one thinks, well, Moses is saying, and at this point they started calling on the name of the God whose name is, I don't want to say the name actually, just sort of traditional reasons, which is weird. I have said it, but then I hesitate, so I'm rather not going to, for the sake of my weak conscience. But so he says they began calling on the name of Adonai, and he actually puts the name there. But then it could also be that he's referring to the title of God El Shaddai, which is God the highest, which is what some scholars also claim the fathers, the patriarchs, called God, the highest God.
Okay.
Because El is God, and then Shaddai is apparently the Most High. But we'll still get there. I think it is a biblical name. And Shem also has a substantive quality to it. So I think like your name is a part of who you are, all the more with God. So when you call on his name, he comes to you. And this is connected to Seth. So Seth's lineage is the lineage that calls on the name of Adonai. And through what... Yeah, and it says... Sorry, what does it say? But that's what does Eve say in the previous verse? Does she speak about Seth? Sorry, I don't...
Yeah. In the previous verse, she says that he's been appointed instead of Abel.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so... Anyway, he's the one that carries on the word, which Abel is described as a prophet by Jesus in the New Testament, and now it seems like Seth is the new prophet of the name of the Lord or something, and his lineage. I like the way that was portrayed in the Noah movie, actually, despite all of its non-biblical stuff. I kind of like the way they portrayed the pre-antediluvian world. But anyway, sorry. What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah. What do I think? I thought, obviously, yeah, we know spoilers, but this is the lineage, obviously, that, or Jesus is traced back to, right? Or David is traced back to, I suppose, and then Jesus is traced back to David. Is that right?
Well,
it ties back to, or it ties forward to Jesus. That this lineage connects the promise of God that God made in Eden to Eve. That links that through. That's what's being maintained here. That connection, right? That is passed on to Seth.
Yes. Yeah.
And Enosh. And yeah, I like the way you said it, that he's the sort of, I mean, a prophet, I guess, is the link to the word. And they use the word in weird and fancy ways in the old days. The Greek logos, and being the carrier of the word is a nice way of putting it, I think. The word that was spoken, that was promise that was made.
Yeah. Yes,
that's
the promises
to come.
Yeah, I like that. Promise to me is that's also just an important term in the Bible, anyway. So the promise, definitely, because it is God makes that promise in the beginning, and then it comes into fulfillment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is, I think it's also really becomes clear that it is the word when it says they called on the name of the Lord. And name. It reminds me of Adam, who names things in the garden as well. But this is kind of that which makes Adam, a part of that which makes Adam like God is that he names things and he speaks words and so on. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. There's also, I mentioned in the previous episode, the word for wives in plural is like Nashim. It is Nashim. And here the word Enosh comes up. The name of Seth's son is Enosh. And that comes from the word Enosh, which means man, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is an interesting name to give your son. I call you man.
That's controversial. Might be forcing something on him there. Probably wouldn't fly today.
Yeah, what's it called? He was misgendered. he was actually a woman, but
they weren't so sure, so they just, to play it safe, they gave him the name.
Yeah.
And then no one could say anything.
Enosh. Anyway, that's quite funny. Well, I wonder if the word, maybe if I really want to get crazy, then maybe the word man comes from this guy's name. Maybe this guy was such a man that they derived a new term for man from his name. That would be an interesting way of seeing it, but there's no evidence for that, so let's not go that far, maybe.
That actually is a bit interesting too. His quality is that with him they began to call on the name of the Lord. And if that is manly behavior, or if that is the example they chose of manly behavior, maybe we need to reevaluate a few things.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like in Genesis 1 verse verse 31, I think. No, 27? I can't remember. Where marriage isn't. No, where the man, I think it is 31, where the man is described as, or the Adam is described as being made in the image of God and being made male and female. The word for male, I have said this quite often, but I'm just going to say it again. Repetition is the mother of learning, right? But the word for male is zachar, which means to remember, and it's very much connected with the remembering of God's covenant with his people. But in this time, the covenant is still only really in the shape of his blessings, his curses, and his promise. I think that's his relationship to his people, is that he blessed them in the garden, he cursed them after the fall, and he gave them a promise to save them despite the fall. And so to remember is what makes you a man, to remember the promises of God, to remember his covenants with his people and so on. And I think that is really cool that you drew that connection actually now with the being the carrier of the word. That's also very Jewish. Like Professor Bombaro keeps mentioning this, that I've got philosophy tutorials with him, and he keeps saying that that it's like deeply Semitic to recognize the power of the word as that which has the agency in the Christian religion, or in the Jewish religion as well, that it is God's word that is that which does the things. So it's the word that kind of repents you, or it's the word that creates, or it's the word that recreates. So through baptism also, it's the word that has the agency, or all of these things. So, and then in the New Testament we find out that the word is actually a person. So that's really cool.
Oh man.
It's not something that you can bend to your own will, like Odin's words, which would be more like a spell, conjury. But in this case, the word is actually a man. Yes, a man. Like in Philippians too. Anyway, yeah. And Enosh. Yeah. Cool. Then I think we can wrap it up with that. We finished the chapter, which is amazing.
4 done.
Yeah. Your boy. Too many more to go.
Oh boy, how many chapters are there in the Bible?
I don't know if this is a good visual representation. If we don't include the introduction, which is like 90% of this.
I think the Hebrew Bible would be a better visual representation.
Yeah, we've got six pages done out of 1,574.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, getting there.
Do that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. One bite at a time. Yeah. Cool. And thanks for joining me again. Did I say that already? I don't know. That was good.